Their implementation, were they a product marketer? Just a quick introduction as to their own CRM journey and the rationale for them being up with us on stage. We have some of our questions prepared for the roundtable that we've discussed beforehand, but we're going to have roving mics. I'm going to open up my Twitter feed and see what you guys have for us. The more we get from you, the more we can actually help you out. It's sort of like customer engagement when you think about it. So why don't we start at the end, Volker? Tell us your 2-minute journey.
Okay, well, I actually started my CRM journey on the academic side of the house. I was an assistant professor teaching marketing, and my research focus was how you can leverage information technology to improve sales and marketing. And then later I switched to the dark side. But going back these 20 plus years, I think some things really interesting, and I wrote my first book, Database Marketing and Computer-Aided Selling, in '93, and a lot of the basic principles from back then are still true today. You got to know your customers, and you got to treat them differently, and build profitable relationships. However, technology clearly has changed the game over the last 2 decades. And with that, customers have changed the rule of engagement. And we heard a lot of this from Peter as well. And he was talking about that hidden part of the sales cycle. And I think the old lead to cash has actually changed into a prospect to promoter, which is definitely different than what it used to be.
Great, thank you. Fred?
Sure, thank you very much. Actually, it was a similar background. I think many of you probably started sales and marketing careers with your own businesses, whether it was shoveling snow. I grew up in Denver, or mowing lawns. I remember, just realizing how important it was as a 13-year-old growing up in Denver. Hey, I'm gonna shovel the first walks, the corner lots, for free. And what I'm going to do is think about how great I do on those walks, and then understand how that might proliferate into the other areas of the block. And I remember Mrs. Peters, she actually liked me to use her shovel. It was wide. I don't know why she wanted me to use that. Another guy actually wanted me to dump the snow all the way into the street, not just on the lawn. And another person yet actually only wanted a small path right through the middle of the walk. And when I actually gave this business to a friend when I was actually on holiday, he totally screwed it up. And I actually lost some customers because he didn't understand just what these customers really knew and what they wanted to have happen with these walks. Obviously, then got into technology, worked with a lot of companies, even here in the Bay Area, one of them being KRON TV, KGO Television, and realized even more importantly how critical just understanding your customers and understanding what your customers really needed from these different experiences. And so started off, really just thinking about that as now we're all in technology and thinking about how we're all up here on this panel. Just the different points of view that I think everybody has had an interaction that they have had really significantly changed their view of how to deal with different customer experiences.
So thank you, Fred. So a real good case study in territory management with the snow shoveling, correct?
Exactly.
Excellent. All right, John, how big is Larry's yacht?
It's big,
Yeah.
Really big. Which one, actually, is a better question.
How big is Larry's island?
That's big, too. But my background in CRM is 20 plus years old. I think I started a little bit differently maybe than everybody else here in the panel is. I actually started my time in the CRM industry building CRM systems. I was a programmer. And before there were CRM systems that you could buy, I used to build them from scratch for a large insurance company. And then I moved into the software development tool area and worked for a company that sold tools that other customers used to build CRM systems. And then I worked for a company that sold CRM systems and was there for many years until Oracle gobbled them up. And that's where I still am today. So I've been doing CRM for a long time. I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of CRM. And it never ceases to amaze me that the reason CRM systems are good are pretty much the same. The reasons they're bad are still pretty much the same. And the reason they're ugly is still pretty much the same. And people seem to still be making the same mistakes over and over again. So one of my missions in life now is to really help companies try to avoid those mistakes and do things right with CRM.
You just gave me an idea for a question. Lorna, you've made the journey from integrated technology to core CRM. Tell us about your background.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. I also am probably approaching about 20 years in the space. Going back to, I remember sitting on panels like this talking about the impact of the internet and moving away from some of the older technology and what that would have on the sales channel and disintermediating the sales channel. So I've also seen a lot of changes in the space. What I really started out focusing in CRM and in my earliest positions was the user experience of CRM. So I was initially a UX designer and really approached CRM from that angle. I think for me what is so inspiring and interesting about CRM and what's kept me in the space for the last 15 plus years is that CRM has continued to fight an adoption hurdle. It's continued to fight a reputation of being about data entry, of being about, forced mandates coming down from the corporation and in terms of mandating forecast entries, mandating forecast updates. And I think what we've seen on the consumer side, on consumer technology in the last 10 years, with what the Amazon recommendation engine or Google now is doing in terms of taking the organic usage of what, for example, a sales rep or a marketer, an agent would do with an application and using that to provide the right recommendations, the right views, the right data that they need at the right stage in the sales cycle is what's fascinating to me about the crossroads that the CRM UX is at just now. And that's what I'm really looking forward to seeing in the next 2 to 3 years from CRM.
I don't understand. I mean, CRM is designed for, there I am, CRM is designed for management. Why should the UX for the rep matter at all?
Exactly. So I think the shift away from that use case of designing CRM for the needs of the corporation and not for its primary constituent, which is really the consumer, the customer, and I'm going to say not to be sales-centric, but the CRM user is where the shift is starting to move. And actually a lot of the focus that we have now on activity streams and social integration with CRM is starting to bring that shift back to that point of interaction between the user and customer and away from the needs of the corporation. And I think it's going to make a huge difference in the CRM adoption gap that we've seen over the last 10 years.
Yeah, to build on what Scott was saying, I mean, there's a case to be made that CRM exists only for the customer because it is the first letter in the acronym, and yet we design it for a lot of our own needs, reporting and forecasting and tracking and whatnot. So Sanjay, why are you on this panel? I mean, marketers don't care at all about the CRM.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I'm thrilled to be here. Hi, everybody. I get to be the odd duck, the non-CRM guy. But I think it actually will be a very fun discussion. My quick background is, I grew up in the consulting world, places like McKinsey & Company, where we would, ask people about, CRM, or they would ask us about CRM, and, do we need this stuff? We said, do you need to sell to customers? I said, well, yeah, we do. Well, then you need to think about this stuff. After I decided I needed to get a real job, I've spent probably the last 15 years in B2B software. And I've worn every hat, right? I've worn the VP of marketing hat, the CMO hat. I was a GM running a $100 million business. I've been the CEO. So I've sort of had this thing surrounded. And, my epiphany from the operating side was, I remember years ago I was a GM and, sitting there with my VP of sales and my VP of marketing, and the VP of sales said, your leads suck and you don't even give me enough of those. And the VP of marketing said, what are you kidding me? You guys can't sell your way out of a paper bag. You only work on 10 out of the 100 that I give you. And it occurred to me, sitting in neither of those roles at the moment, that they both couldn't be wrong. But it was also true that one of them couldn't be right? And the reality was, they were both right. There had to be a better way, and it was the fact that these sort of systems hadn't yet grown up and processes hadn't grown up to make us all realize that there isn't a sales and there isn't a marketing, there is a revenue chain. And so that's what makes this discussion, I think, fun.
Excellent. Great. So you guys are welcome to start thinking about questions. We're going to tee off with a few of our own. I'm actually going to start with one that we weren't prepared, but John, a comment that you made about the same mistakes being made by all the CRM deployments. I'd like each of you guys, all of you actually, to just pipe up with what's the worst mistake you've ever seen a customer make? And the answer can't be they didn't adopt it enough, because we know that we know that adoption is associated, at least in my research, with better performance, but you need to drive adoption the same way. Why don't we start right back here, Sanjay, with you, and we'll geographically move our way through, and then we'll start to mix things up a little bit. What's the worst CRM deployment mistake you've ever seen? And it may or may not have been your product. It may have been one of the others on the panel. Who knows? But share with us. Express your feelings.
I'll start at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy, which is one that I've seen over and over again. And frankly, when I first, years and years ago, got my hands on it the first time, it became a gold-plated contact system, right? Instead of people having in spreadsheets the names and phone numbers of people that they were calling, it just became, a set of ones and zeros of the names and phone numbers of the people that they were calling. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that you're not going to get a whole lot of additional value out of a system if that's what you use it for. And I would hazard a guess that now 15, 20 years on, there's still a lot of people out there that use that system as a glorified contact book.
Yeah.
So there's still shadow accounting. I'm going to need my mic on, Matt, permanently. And even after the event, I'm just going to keep it on forever. It just makes me feel good. So shadow accounting, if you're using more than one system, is it really worth our time spent not selling to be alt-tabbing through applications all the time? And at a certain point, so Lorna, how have you seen companies also figure out a way not to implement it so that they're just not trusting it as a system of record?
And that's going to be the most common. And I've seen a lot of shadow accounting in my day, also having specialized in sales performance management in addition to CRM. I've seen a lot of people come up with really creative ways of how not to use the packaged software solution that's in place. But yeah, again, just going back to the point we were making earlier, I think putting that focus on the needs of the corporation and driving down the adoption in so doing is probably what I would say is the most common mistake that certainly in some more legacy situations I've seen. And again, it's about creating very rigid workflows around internal controls of
timeshare sales,
for example, the sales reps. About it's constraining their ability to deal with the customer rather than empowering them to deal with the customer in terms of getting workflows for approval and not having access to the data they need. It's forcing a data entry system that doesn't give anything back to them when they're actually dealing with the customer. So I think that focus on very rigid, narrow definitions of roles, narrow definitions of channel engagement and workflows. And as you say, not only is it frustrating to users and they'll find a way around it, but customers don't care about those things. Customers do not care about roles, channels, departments, what stage you are in the sales cycle. And if you put a customer who doesn't care about those things in front of a user who's controlled by them and defined by them and working within that system, you're going to build an adoption problem that ultimately will cause the data to be such low quality that you will ultimately abandon the implementation. So focusing again on the needs of the customer and user is probably the most important thing to look at in terms of avoiding adoption problems down the line.
Thank you. John, you teed this one up for us.
Well, for me, bad and ugly are the same thing. And maybe you've done this out there, maybe you haven't, but the worst thing I've seen companies do is try to build the best CRM system in the world. And what they try to do is they try to put everything in it, and it's got 100 tabs across the top, and it's got 100 tabs down the side, and it's got so much information you can't find anything. And that's probably the biggest mistake I see companies make over and over again. And it takes 24 months to do it.
We're going to come back to the idea of TMI in just a minute. Fred.
Yeah, I would agree with just about everything that folks had said, and I think the way that we try to think about it is, you're never going to have success at people getting anything of value out of these things as long as you're building an application of oppression, right? That's how CRM kind of started. It was either manage your contacts so that we can manage where you are in your sales cycle and manage your forecast, and that's the only thing that matters. And so it was really more of this application of oppression rather than this tool of engagement or really of experience. And I think, as we really think about the evolution of what CRM is becoming, it's all, and I think we've heard it a few times, it's not just about how the user uses it, it's about how the user is enabled and empowered to deliver an awesome customer experience every time. And we see this happen with either over complexity or the lack of interesting information or maybe even too much information, but getting the right information with a tool that's actually valuable, I think, is really the goal.
Great. And Volker?
agreed with everything that was said here, of course. One additional thing I might want to add that I've seen in many projects is a very, very siloed approach. Because at the end of the day, there are so many touch points and channels of engagement with the customer. It not only involves sales and marketing people, there's service people, product management people, people in the field, et cetera. In fact, if you think about it, there's a lot more people that are actually somehow responsible for the overall customer experience or the relationship with the customer. And I think that's often underestimated. Just a very recent, very simple example is I was talking to a company, and they to their someone from marketing, and they were proud to tell me about, well, we're now tweeting about all the good things that our customer company does, all the new product releases, events that we have, et cetera. And then they realized all of a sudden it really worked well, but then all of a sudden tweets came back, and they were not only positive, but there were actually customers starting to complain or saying, my product doesn't work, please help me. So all of a sudden it was a service, became a service topic as well, but they've never talked to the customer service organization. So now they did, and the head of customer service said, well, it's your problem that you started this. I could have told you right from the beginning what's going to happen.
So let's take a little bit of a peek at this. Based on a tweet that I saw, how many of you folks in the audience give access to other customer touch stakeholders, marketing, service, even back office folks, with the CRM? Not many, 20% if. The research that I do suggests that it's worth considering doing that. The tweet was right. CRM is not just about sales. You might have different applications for good reasons. The folks in customer service need the telephony. They need all the other stuff. Obviously, the marketing folks need the automation tools. But it doesn't mean that these things can't be integrated with one another. What matters, I think, and Lorna, you brought this up, is really the user experience. So I want to talk a little bit about that sort of end user, the internal customer being the sales rep and not the manager who needs their forecast. And Fred, I'm going to actually ask us to start with you. How can Company X, represented by our audience members today, take a CRM that might be provided by one of you big providers here, and what are the best practices you've seen in your customers for making it work for an inside sales rep, a channel rep, a customer service care manager, all the different job roles that actually could or should have access to that data? How do they make it, the UX really sing for those folks' individuals' needs?
So I think it all starts with just simplification. I mean, we've just had these things get way too big. I mean, John and I talk about it. I used to work at Oracle. We've talked about it with SAP. I think we've just made these gargantuan things that ultimately people can't use. And Microsoft is absolutely in the same ballpark. None of us are any different here. But at least what we've seen is a big jump to working the way the seller needs to work rather than having the system just drive everything. And that requires you to rethink it. Everything from, how many of you do a self-frisk in the morning every day looking for this thing, right? We all do it. And the ladies are doing purse dives. I have to actually call my wife's phone just to find out where it is. I'm the locator for that. But this thing has just changed our lives. And it's not just, an interesting thing. This has become part of our bodies. How many of you feel a vibration? It's a phantom vibration. Somebody's texting you, but they're really not, right? It's just that this thing is so insidious. But it's changed the way we think about everything. And so this is a salesperson's, marketing person's, service person's life. So just the notion of being mobile and having a device that actually uses it that way. But the other piece that we've really seen that has been instrumental in, I think, driving customer experience is that every single touch that a customer has, whether they start on your website or they might even start on Google or Bing, or as they might even have a problem and they call support, all of those things need to be brought together, and every single person that might have to touch that customer needs to be aware of those things. So both inside and external collaboration, and then you add to that just the notion of social. And I'm saying these things just as elements, but simplicity and giving the right information to the right people so that they all touch this customer in a similar way, I think is one of the key goals, at least, that we're looking at.
Volker, I'd like to hear your opinion on the same thing, the user experience, job role specific.
Yeah. So totally agree. And I think mobile devices actually have helped all the vendors focus a little bit more on simplification simply because there's less real estate, right? The bigger the screens, the more information you can put on there. And while I do have the position that it is important to have all that information, but it's a matter of how do you make it consumable? And coming back to solid approach and what I said earlier, it's really important to get as complete picture of your customers or prospects as possible. And you've seen all day long how the volume of data is growing pretty much every day. Transactional, internal data, customer profile, all the social media data as well, all the conversations that are going on out there about your products and brands, and then a lot of information that InsideView, for example, can bring together and then serve in a more consumable way. This is all relevant information, and there isn't really too much data in the background. So the question really is, how do you make it consumable? How do you leverage tools and mechanisms, feed mechanisms versus things where a sales rep could do more exploration maybe of data, leveraging tools such as predictive analytics. Amazon was mentioned earlier. I mean, we're seeing things like this more and more in the B2B space where the tools basically out of, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of products basically provide recommendations to the sales rep of, these are the top 5 products you should talk with this customer about the next time you call him.
Yeah.
So we're kind of getting mixed messages here. You guys are confusing me. If I'm in the audience, I'm here all morning saying more information. Peter Ostrow saying sales intelligence, social marketing, you got to bring it all in. And yet we're hearing that simple is good and the KISS rule applies. So I'm sure there's probably a couple of scenarios. Why don't we start over here with you, Sanjay, and Lorna maybe next. How can we deploy this system of engagement with our customers and not drink from a fire hose, or at least put the right kind of filter on all the stuff that we probably could use, but only a little bit of it actually is appropriate for any particular interaction?
I'll make a general point, and then I'll tell a story about it. To Volker's point, it is absolutely, I think about it as curation of that content, right? The recommendations element of it. It's, we're a marketing software platform that sits alongside the CRM system, but one of the most powerful pieces of ours is an application in our suite that actually sits inside the CRM system for the sales rep. And it's got essentially curated content in real time with a metaphor of flames and stars, right? Which is how urgent and how important. That's it, right? Talk to this person about product XYZ, call this person about something, et cetera, and it's flames and stars, really simple. I know what I need to do in real time. The story is, I was talking with a fellow who ran sales at Mercer, one of our customers, and I said, why'd you do this stuff? And he said, well, I had the CRM system, et cetera, but the higher ups decided in all their wisdom that they were going to increase my number 20%.
Anybody? No, that doesn't happen to anyone.
That doesn't resonate with anybody, does it? And then they said, but I can't hire 20% more salespeople. And I said, WTF? And so what did I do? I went to, Scott had it up on the screen, the Google search box, and I started poking around for, how am I going to solve this problem? And I swear I must have, in some path, I hit, one of your white papers and downloaded it or something, and I got a call from a sales rep in about 5 seconds.
Was that too fast or was that appropriate?
And he said, wow, do I want my sales guys to have that information? I said, that's cool. By the way, the reason that, he got that call in 5 seconds is because my sales reps didn't have a sea of, information center. They had a curated thing that said, this Mercer guy just went ding, call him now, because of some pattern of information. And I said, well, that's interesting. That's really cool. How did we compare to the other guys? He said, I didn't talk to the other guys because they called me 6 days later, right? Again, raise your hand if you've ever heard that story. And so the importance, you almost cannot overemphasize the importance of this simplicity point and curation and, recommending what your sales team needs to do when. From a marketing perspective, I talk about it as it's win-ready leads that matter. It's not high-quality leads or leads, right? Because I want my salespeople selling and closing with all the time they have, not, marketing to people, right? And so if I in the end, the punchline of the story is this guy got 20% more productivity out of his existing finite number of sales reps because they wasted 20% less time having conversations with good people who just weren't ready to buy something.
But is there a case to be made, and then we'll go back to the question, is there a case to be made for someone who's an account manager, a sales rep, business development, whatever the title is, doing some of their own primary research, acting like a little bit of a mini marketer, if you will? I mean, there's a lot of tools that are now in the hands of sellers that can allow them to create content and prezzies and configure things. I mean, I'll throw that right back to you, and then we'll let the panel kick in. I mean, time spent selling is a crucial metric, and we all want to give people more time to do that, but is it possible to over-automate the process and we end up with the timeshare scenario?
Yeah, no, there's for sure there's a balance in that. And you want, part of this curation, we hold nothing back. So everything that's in the marketing system is visible inside the CRM system. And so that sales rep...
Say that again, please.
Everything that is in the marketing system is visible inside the CRM system, and more importantly, vice versa. Everything that's happening in the CRM and sales system is replicated back into the marketing system, because shouldn't some interaction that has just been logged by the sales rep with this particular prospect influence the next set of marketing communications that go out to them? Right? Of course it is. So that information being visible in both places allows a sales rep to be intelligent, right? To sort of notice that, well, the system isn't telling me to do X, Y, or Z right now. I'm kind of noticing, X, Y, or Z that implies that maybe I want to, because in my territory patch, I've noticed that companies of this type tend to behave this way, so I'm going to apply some of my own expertise to it. So for sure, there's a balance.
Right. A little bit of disruptive activity, as Matt would probably support it from this morning. So maybe over to John. Talk to us a little bit about this sort of, I'm a seller, but I can do a little bit of marketing. I'm a marketer, but I'm actually responsible for what goes into the pipeline. We're all kind of used to the traditional funnel, right? And one of you guys, I think it might have been you, talked about, these leads stink. Well, you guys couldn't close a screen door in a hurricane. What about the leads that actually should go back up? How do you use the CRM and then the integrated marketing and social content to actually create a scenario so that when your sales organizations are empowered to say, this really isn't a good lead because it doesn't just get thrown out, but it actually gets remarketed and goes back to the man-machine RoboCop mindset?
Yeah. Well, I think, first of all, we're assuming that you have to have a well-connected marketing and sales automation system. I think that's table
Everybody
stakes.
does, right?
Table stakes.
Everybody? Marketing and sales, kumbaya?
If you really want it to work best in class, you need to get somewhere close to having a well-integrated sales and marketing system. And sometimes there's a very good reason why a lead has to get kicked back up to marketing. I mean, you might have a very qualified lead that gets to a sales rep, and the sales rep talks to the customer, and it just turns out that for whatever reason, the buying decision has been pushed out, and you don't want to throw that lead away. You want to get that lead back into the marketing system. You want to have that lead nurtured and kept warm until the customer is ready to buy. And in our sales and marketing system, when that actually occurs, the sales rep can actually pick what nurturing campaign they want to send that lead back into directly, rather than marketing have to try and figure that out. But if you do have, as Sanjay said, if you have all of the sales information visible to the marketing people and all of the marketing information visible to the salespeople, then they can make a lot better decisions about what to do with those leads when those different situations occur. I mean, that visibility up and down the life cycle of a lead is critically important for both stakeholders, I think.
Lorna, you want to add?
Yeah, I think if anything, when we talk about the shift from systems of record to systems of engagement, what it's teaching us is that activity matters, right? Is that, and we're all talking about notions of relevance and notions of how to present data, but we know whether it's customer or prospect activity that you're registering in the marketing department versus the sales department versus the support department, it doesn't matter. Activity matters, and activity around a customer, around a case, around an opportunity, around responses to a campaign is relevant to whatever part of the CRM value chain is involved in engaging with the customer. The customer doesn't care about the channel differences, and I think what we're seeing in CRM is that there's a much more fundamental responsibility for anyone who's talking to the customer to understand the broader dialogue, what's been said, who said it, what's the history with the company across departments, whether it's picking up whatever's happened in marketing that they've just registered for an event, or following up on a case for them, or knowing that a renewal's coming up if you're on the support side. That's becoming really critical, and bubbling that activity around the customer up to let any of the roles and channels get involved in that dialogue is really the paradigm shift we're talking about how to make data more relevant to the user.
Excellent. We have about 6 minutes left. Are we going to have any questions coming in? Any hands going up? Because we'll have some microphones available for you guys. Don't be shy. You can tweet, or you can raise your hands, or you can just say, "Oh my God, I want my lunch." All right.
Maybe I can just add to what
go ahead, Volker.
Lorna said. I think it's really about turning insight into action. Totally agree with that, because all the customer data is worthless if there's no action related to it. But at the same time, this also tells you that, I think you had as one of your questions, is there too much information? Yes, there's too much information, but there's never too much data. And I think that's an important point. And we're talking sales marketing. Don't forget about the service area. A lot of important customer information is coming from service interactions with the customer. Even sales opportunities, right? Renewal of a contract, or extending warranty, or all kinds of things. Selling parts, cross-sell opportunities. So let's not forget about this area as well. So at the end of the day, it's really getting as complete view of the customer, 360-degree view of their customer, and then turn this insight into action to engage with your customers in context, was mentioned earlier, and in the moment when it really matters, right? Immediately, not a week later, right? When you're already too late for the deal, and you've become an irrelevant vendor for this customer. He's already down the path, and you're simply too late. And you may try as hard as you can. You've already lost the deal before you know it.
Yeah, I mean, I just had, on a personal level, and I encourage you, think about, you strip away all of your sort of business trappings. We're orchestrating a move personally, and so I was online, and I filled out a lead form, right, that goes to moving companies, through one of these, Quinn Street or other type distributors. I filled out that one form, and in total, I got probably 10 people that reached out. One of them literally called my cell number within a minute and a half of me filling out that form. I picked up that phone call. The rest of them, I was just already on to the next activity in my life. It wasn't that I wasn't interested in them. I wouldn't have filled out the form if I was. But I haven't talked to the other 9 people, right?
Our consumer experiences absolutely inform the way we work in business. We've all been now trained to expect fantastic customer service. I'm old enough to remember when going to a car dealership, we talked about that this morning, was a horrible experience. These places were dirty, they were mean, and now they're these beautiful, crisp, spanking, gleaming places where sales and service is still very much separated out. But the idea of how the consumer world impacts what we do in B2B is probably no more apparent than in social media. So probably going to be maybe possibly our last question that we cover here is maybe we'll just start with you, Fred. We haven't heard from you or John in the last couple of minutes. Talk to us about either a case study or a scenario where maybe one of your customers literally sourced a deal or at least had a deal heavily influenced through a post, a tweet, a share, or a pin, if you have one, or at least talk about how in the context of sort of this entire circle of life customer engagement, we have the opportunity to do that effectively.
Yeah, so I have a good Hakuna Matata story here. So
Thank you for going with the
tying your
metaphor.
theme there. You're welcome. Tourism Ireland. You guys, maybe many of you have traveled, you do fun things. When you do it, you start with research. Well, there's a whole movement around social media and tourism. Tourism Ireland is the #2 most popular tourism destination on Facebook, for instance, and they're one of our customers. But not just to get fans and to just go out and do random marketing. What they've done is they've really started to look at the millions of fans that they have on these places and to get very targeted about trips. They look at people's friends, when they become a fan. It's not just, hey, this great network of people, but it's very specific people that these people trust and know. They actually go out and do searches around how close of a friend are these people? Do they post on each other's walls? And from this, they get and ascertain a great level of insight to be able to package very specific tourism, whether it's travel and hotel, different experiences within Ireland, and they've been able to drive a ton of improved experiences, but they've actually grown their business in doing this with social. So just one example around Tourism Ireland.
At this point, we go on a website once, we expect it to say, welcome back, Peter, the next time we go on the website. And if it's not personalized, we're like, who are these bozos? I mean, to Volker's point, what Tourism Ireland is looking at is not information, it's data. It's very actionable data. John, you want to bring us home?
I'll just say, what I think you're going to see in the next 12 months in that same topic is, we talk about sales automation systems, marketing automation systems, service automation systems. You're going to see this notion of a social media monitoring automation system really become just as important and popular as a new category of application with vendors and with customers alike. I mean, we're seeing, a year ago I'd walk into a customer, they'd have 20 people sitting in cubes monitoring Twitter feeds. Now these companies are looking to build things or buy things that automate that entire process and look for posts on Twitter that can be turned into sales opportunities or turned into service opportunities and help companies be more proactive in driving a much better holistic customer experience. So I think that's going to be a big thing to talk about in the next 12 months.
Absolutely. So we are done with our panel, which means only one thing. I think we're going to thank our panel members, actually. First of all, and I don't know if we're having a farewell bid from Umberto or we're going straight to our luncheon.
Folks are hungry.
Straight to lunch.
Democracy rules. Straight to lunch, guys. Thank you very much. Thanks, guys.
Hey,